Facebook and Google were going to purchase Skype, people are speculating that Microsoft swooped in and made this huge buy to keep it away from them.
Just to give them the middle finger. What's up?
Yeah. I think that was part of it. I also think that's part of the reason why it was $8.5 billion, because they wanted to keep it away from Android and iOS. They see Windows Phone as potentially being just ridiculously huge. And I mean, it's ridiculously huge, right? But it could be their bread and butter for decades to come. It's not going to happen if Android and iOS keep kicking it while it's down. So they need to do something big to sort of change the tide for that. And I think Skype is one step in that. I don't think it's going to really change the tide for them, but I think it's going to introduce a lot of killer features for Windows Phone that's going to make people look at Windows Phone products and think, wow, that's really cool, I can do that. And oh, by the way, it's cheaper than the iPhone 4. Or it's cheaper than the iPhone 5, or it's cheaper than the Samsung Galaxy.
So they're just looking for the market advantage, just by having this little thing that everyone seems to use a lot.
But
200 million.
That is a lot for Microsoft to bet on. That is a huge. Ballmer has not made some of the wisest choices as CEO. There was the Kin, and
I'm sorry. What was that? What was the Kin? Did that even succeed remotely?
Oh God, the Kin.
Not at all. It was just an awful product that crashed. And this means Microsoft is banking on Skype working out. Now, there are two big problems with this. Number one, Microsoft has a notorious trouble with implementation.
Yeah.
Taking a product, getting it to market, and getting it in such a way that, I mean, the current version of Microsoft Office 2010, remember 2007? That was a big mess, and we were stuck with it, and people hated it. It fortunately had a monopoly share, but if they take that design aesthetic and that mentality and apply it to Skype, going to be a mess. And number two, Skype itself, let's face it, the latest interface they put on it since 4.0 onward has been obnoxious.
The most recent one was obnoxious to where I actually rolled back. I was like, no, I can't use this. What is
I
this?
tried rolling back till it forced me to upgrade again.
Yeah,
it did? Wow, yeah. I'm at, what, 5.0, 105, I think? Got lucky. Let me
and there also is the fact Skype is a P2P calling network, and the biggest vulnerability to this was demonstrated, what was it, late last year, early this year, when
the supernodes go down, you got no Skype.
Right, and Skype has already demonstrated it's got its problems. Microsoft has problems with implementation.
Yeah, but isn't this Microsoft's MO though to get this piece of technology that a couple of other competitors want and just screw up using it? Well, that's been their MO for a decade now, hasn't it?
They pretty much just buy a product someone else made and rebrand it as their own. That's what they've been doing ever since the company was essentially founded.
I'm not saying this is a smart move by Microsoft, but what I am saying is I think that's what they're going to. I think that's why they paid so much money for it is because they wanted to keep it out of Google's hands and because they see this as a future necessary component of Windows Phone, exclusive to Windows Phone. And they'll be on PCs as well, but keeping it away from iOS and Android. And on top of that, it's not going to be for Windows Phone 7. I think what they're going to do is try to get this really integrated into Windows Phone 8.
Yeah, I think they're just going to make it exclusive and then slightly release off to the other platforms in order to garner more market share from other companies.
Well, I'll be honest with you. If you've been using Mac or you've been using If you've been using Mac, the only reason you're using Skype is because people on Windows use it, and if you're using Linux, you don't use Skype.
Well, you do, but you don't actually use Skype. You can't call it Skype. It doesn't have half the stuff that...
Well, I don't know. I mean, what do you...
Using a text client with voice capability, that's about it.
I mean, what do you think, Nash? I've given my reasons for why Microsoft... What do you think Microsoft did this for? Just jealousy?
I mainly think this was a strategic buy because, and here's the reason why. They already have Windows Live Messenger, which does have some of the same capabilities as Skype. It's just the main thing it lacks is the ability to dial cell phones or landlines from Skype for, you pay for that, and you could call somebody who's on like a regular telephone. That's a big advantage, but not something that...
You wouldn't pay $8.5 billion to build that out, though.
Right, because honestly, Microsoft could have put down $500 million, $1 billion to advertise Windows Live Messenger, revamp Windows Live Messenger, rework it, move it up, and add these capabilities. That could have been done in-house for $1 billion, and it would have had the same. It would have had the same functionality and mindset. I think the big reason they bought it was they just had to keep it away from their competitors.
Yeah, I think they are just playing a game of keep away. I think you both are right on that, without a doubt.
Do you think Intel will play keep away with its new 3D processors?
Oh.
You like that transition, huh?
You know what? I'm not the biggest Intel fan. I've used AMD processors for over a decade, but those Tri-Gate processors are sexy, are they not?
They definitely look sexy. I don't see this. Are we going to see them in desktop? Because I was under the impression we're going to see them in mobile first.
I think they're probably going to go mobile first. For those of you who are unaware of what we're talking about, a Tri-Gate processor. Normally, your typical transistor creation process, the micro creation process, the lines go in one singular two-dimensional plane. Intel has spent the last 10 years developing a way to make use of a third cross plane. So they're writing circuitry in a different direction, a little bit higher up. Now this sounds
XYZ axis.
Yes, it's a three-dimensional processor. Not in that it makes three-dimensional graphics. Whatnot. It's written. It's created.
It's a completely different way to. Not a completely different. It's a modified way to create the actual transistors inside the computer processor.
I want to give them a golf clap. That's clever.
Now the big advantage of this, and why Jason mentions that it's going to be implemented mobile first, is you can get the same power, the same performance in terms of speed and workability
at a third of the power cost.
At a third of the power. This is going to make laptops, batteries just.
Smartphones. You know how we have dual-core smartphones right now?
Yep.
Well, imagine single-core smartphones doing exactly the same thing for a third of the power.
Mm-hmm. And
so hey, it's gonna allow for longer battery time. It's going to allow for substantially more powerful in-your-hand computers. It's also going to allow for substantially cheaper to run desktop computers as well.
I think
ARM per watt, you're going to get more power per watt.
I think ARM is a little worried about this.
I think ARM is really scared about this. This is going to turn. This is going to turn the entire Atom line into a powerhouse.
I don't think Intel's going to play keep away with this one. I think they're actually just going to continue doing what they've been doing since their creation, just putting a 60% markup on all their stuff.
Well, now when I said keep away, I said, are they going to keep this? Are they not going to license this technology to AMD?
No way.
Oh no, there's no way they would.
And that makes me sad because I'm a big fan of AMD processors. I like them. I like the price to performance ratio they provide. But this could be the death knell. This could really.
Now, hold on there, because Intel has Tri-Gate. This is the technology they've been working on for 10 years or so. But this is only one way of creating the so-called triple gate. AMD has been working on their own way of doing it, along with, I think it's VIA, and IBM, I believe. They've been working on a way to do it. There are actually several different theoretical ways to do it. AMD, I believe AMD announced that in 2013 or 2014, they'll be ready to roll them out. I just think this is going to give Intel a significant edge over AMD for a few years.
Yeah, if Intel's got it right now, and 3 years in the tech cycle, that's an eternity. That's going to undercut. If not only the mobile implementation of this, not only the power advantages and the speed advantages for smaller and smaller devices, but the idea of putting this together to make much more powerful, robust desktop processors, because if it can get more performance out of lower power, you could crank that power up and get much higher performance for the same power you have right now. Was going to be amazing.
Now, heat's still an issue. Heat's one of those things that it can't. You still just have to disperse the heat. You get more performance for the amount of heat you're putting out, which is good. But clocking up the performance means clocking up the speed does mean you still have to deal with that heat issue. There's still that thermal threshold.
Right. And on a handheld device, honestly, how much performance do you really need for that?
Have you seen what people try to do with their handheld devices nowadays?
Mm-hmm. Well, I see some of the more hacky things they do.
Well, the hacky things. I mean, I love that myself, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people, they want to view YouTube. A lot of people are clamoring for high-definition Netflix on Android.
You're going to need, like, a quad-core just to run Flash, on a handheld.
One of Apple's most popular applications on the iPad is GarageBand, which is a recording studio on the iPad, and it doesn't work fantastic, but it does work. That's a insanely popular. Just that sort of thing. Video editing potential.
Touché.
All this. Yeah, I mean,
I
people
didn't realize they had that.
Yeah, people want these options. I mean, it's the idea that you could have, say, if you could potentially implement something as powerful as my quad-core 8 gigabyte editing bay, and that's a light editing bay in terms of a professional. That's light. But if you could get something even that powerful into a handheld implementation, holy crap!
I mean, if you want to cook a steak on the go, that might work. Make up the voltage.
Well, we're gonna have to see. I mean, right now it's a lot of hype, and it's very exciting because this is the reason this is very exciting for a lot of geeks is that this is a technological breakthrough that they've finally been able to execute on. They'll be able to execute on the production scale, and this was theoretical not 5 years ago. This is only theory on paper, maybe 5 years ago, that it maybe could be done. This is why this is very exciting. We'll have to see the specs. We'll have to see how much they cost. Again, cost is a big concern when it comes to a lot of people. So I know for myself personally, if I'm only going to see a 60% increase, I don't want to pay, a $500 premium that Intel likes to put on their high-end chips.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to see how that all plays out. But this is actually pretty big. If AMD can't step up its game, it just might be bye-bye to AMD.
Yeah.
And the only x86, manufacturer out there will be Intel and VIA, and VIA, I think, maybe produces a 1.7 gigahertz processor.
I mean, AMD, as far as I know right now, as far as in the same ballpark as Intel or ARM, as the various ARM manufacturers, AMD's got no foothold there. Nothing that's where everything's going mobile.
AMD, I mean, AMD is going to just have to look at the server market more with their Bulldozer chipset that's coming out.
They'll have to because AMD doesn't. They partner up with ARM in terms of mobile, but ARM. I can't really, man. ARM in the mobile marketplace is on the low end phone, which isn't a bad place to be. You just have to make up for that in very, very, very large quantities.
There was a silly rumor going out, and I say silly. People are like, "Oh, this is going to happen." No, it's never going to happen. There's a silly rumor last week that Apple is going to be moving to ARM for their laptops, and I just had to stop myself from breaking into a giggling fit. There's no way if they do it.
They had like the G4, which will process.
That's a RISC processor. That was a form of ARM processor, but that's back in a day when things were much less powerful.
Yeah.
Here's where I kind of disagree with you, Nash. It doesn't make sense right now. I understand that. But Apple has had a history with Steve Jobs at the helm of being extremely controlling over everything. I don't think they want to be tied to x86. I think they want to be tied to Apple and whatever Apple creates.
Yeah, but they're saying by 2013 they're going to move their laptops to ARM. Really?
Well, that's the rumor. 2013, I could see the MacBook Airs being moved to ARM.
Maybe I
could see that. If you want to reduce power, you go to ARM. Yeah. Or if Intel has these out, maybe you jump to this processor and you reduce power on that. You bump up the battery life on the MacBook Airs, and all of a sudden you give all of your fans another reason to cream themselves over you.
I do agree with you about Apple wanting to keep everything Apple. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where I buy credit in this whole let's go with ARM and then let's custom make this for Apple. That's where I sort of buy credit in it, but there's also the whole thing that building chips is expensive. and it's very risky. If a couple of bad